It is nerve-wracking, but I have the privilege to share a little bit of my life, actually, with you, and that's why I want to talk about the in-between, and what is the in-between and what it means, because sometimes in life we are stuck in between this and where we want to be, in between being what God has called us to be or do and doing something completely different that sometimes feels like it's in the completely opposite direction to where God called us to be, and another way of saying in between is saying I'm working my way up to, and it really takes work. It really takes a lot of work to get to that place. The in-between means that you are between two clearly defined stages in your life. And that's the first step. Clearly defined stages. You have to know where you're at right now, and you have to know where you're going. Otherwise, you're going to be in between something, but you're not going to know where you're going to, right? We can be in between being a child to a man, in between, being overweight and trying to be fit again, in between being an apprentice to becoming a master of something, in between the many no's that life will throw at us to the yes that we're looking for. So why don't we close our eyes one more time? Why don't we ask God to show us what it means to be in this in-between for us, and how can we navigate that? Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the opportunities that you give to everyone. Thank you for the opportunities that you have given me and my wife. Thank you for this church. I ask you, Lord, that it is you that really teaches us today something. If there's something that it is to be learned about this process in life, that it comes from you. Be with us and speak to us today, and learn and help us learn how can we navigate in this messy stage of our lives, in between where we're at and where we want to go. Right? Amen. So, today I have the privilege to say that I'm living my God-given dream. I'm living my purpose in life. I have a job that I've always wanted to have. But it didn't happen, just by accident or from night to the next day. This Thursday, I took my booster shot, and I didn't sleep that night at all. I was shaking all night. I had high fevers. I had the chills. I couldn't sleep. And I felt like I needed to go to the bathroom, right? And I was having the worst night ever. And I got up, and I started making my way to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, I hear, and I thought, who in his right mind would be knocking on my door at 3 a.m. in the morning? And then I opened up my eyes, and I was on the floor. I fainted. Yeah. So when you go and take your booster, you got to do it on a weekend. But sometimes we think that just because we know our calling, and just because we know where we're going, and that God is with us, it's going to be boom, 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 and we're there. It happens so fast because God is with you. He's going to, breakthrough. He's going to push you. He's going to accelerate, but God times are different than our times. And what I'm going to tell you about didn't happen, in not even in 5 years. It's been a lifelong process. What am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because if I'm at this position, anybody could be, because I'm an ordinary man, all right? And also because if you are in between, you are not alone. God is with you, And if you don't know where you're going, you're also not alone. You can define that calling. You can find what God wants to do with your life, It's a lifelong process, but we all can make it, And I am not there yet by any means. Since 2020, I finally got the position to do what I was called to do. And I started working for Ictus International as an associate director. And I always knew that my calling and my dream was to be in a position of influence, not because I wanted fame or influence, but because I wanted to help those who are not being helped, And this organization that I work for, and I'm learning to do so many things that is helping thousands of kids in 14 different countries of Latin America. But in between me having that dream and seeing it happen was not what I expected. So I want to share some of my testimony, and I want to go as fast as I can and talk about my childhood and my college years. And then I wanted to start in the in-between, to really dissect what it means to be in the in-between. But to really get to that point, I want to share some key points of my life, hopefully fast. Starting from my childhood. In my childhood, my life was all about family and church. All my memories probably are about my family and my church. My dad worked hard, and he was struggling to provide. But I remember that we were always helping others. We lived in a poor neighborhood of Guatemala, and my dad, he was probably a rising star there, I would say, because he was working hard. He had his degree. He was still struggling to pay the bills, but he could have just focused on himself and us and moved somewhere else. But he decided to stay. My mom decided to stay, and we opened a church at my home. And so all my childhood memories are about my family and my church. My dad helped alcoholics, homeless people, random people who would come and knock on our doors because they didn't know where to go and spend the night. And I was that kid that had to move out of his room and let some random person go in the room. Many funny stories about a drunk man who lived in front of our house who didn't want to go to his house. And then my dad used to tell him, you know what, you should really go home because we have to go to bed and your wife is going to be angry at you. Oh, no, I'm the boss of my house. I don't care. Well, then why don't you just go to your house? She's going to hit me. I don't want to go. That happened so many times. And I didn't understand why my dad was doing it. Anyways, that was my childhood. I didn't really connect it with Jesus and with God at a personal level at that time. But I knew that my mom was connected to Jesus and my dad was connected to Jesus. And I could see it in their interactions with others. My teenage years, family, church, and then I found God. I truly found God. I wanted God in my life. I wanted to know what he wanted for me. And I was 15 years old when I first felt him touching me. And that's when I knew that he wanted to use me. That's when he started putting that dream in me. I went to a Christian school, and every year we had a camp. It was a retreat. We used to play a lot, but we also had a guest that would preach, and we had a lot of worship times. I enjoyed it as a kid. And I couldn't wait to get to my senior year because there was this process in which you were walking throughout your life in high school, that when you get to your senior year, that camp would last 4 years. 4 days, not 3 days, 4 days. Because the third day was very special. The third day, if you wanted to, if you really wanted to, you could get to hear God and know what he wanted for you. That was the purpose of that camp. And for so many of my friends, that sounded like a crazy thing. But not for me. I had nothing more than wanting to know what God wanted for my life. So I went to that camp, and I remember waking up on the third day of the camp when I was, going to figure out my destiny and my calling. And the first thing we did, we had breakfast, and then we go to, it was like a forest, and we were all sitting. And then the guy who was in charge of the camp, and he started telling us, today God can really speak to your life. Today your life can be changed. And we have so many special guests, that have come far away from different countries that want to share their testimonies with you because they heard God speak to their lives when they were your age. So that's what's going to happen to you if you're willing to. But first, you got to hear from God. If you don't hear from God first, whoever comes here and tells you, whatever you hear, it's not going to really be, truth. And it's not going to have a meaning to your life. So what they did is they made us go to the forest with a list of 50 Bible verses. And they said, start reading through the Bible. And if you feel something when you get to a verse, or if there is something that you think that this is something that might be appealing to you, stay there and pray with that verse. And I'm like, I thought this was going to be like a supernatural thing. I thought I was going to hear God's voice. Luis, you will do this. No, they're sending me to read the Bible. I've been reading the Bible my entire life. So I just go there, I grab my piece of paper, I sit away from everybody, and I said, well, God, I'm going to give it a chance. And I didn't go in order. I just happened to open Matthew 25:40. And from the moment I started reading that verse, something started happening in my heart. I started feeling, like I wanted to cry. And nothing was happening. I was not in pain. I just started feeling like something inside me was moving. And I really wanted to cry. And I kept on reading. And that verse, I'll tell you later what it says. But that verse was the one that God used to tell me, yes, I'm going to use you. That's when I knew that God wanted to use me. And then the day passed, the guest speakers, shared. And that day I came out of that camp knowing that my life was going to be dedicated to Jesus. Whether if it's my college degree or if I was going to become a minister or whatever, I just knew that God wanted to use me and that he just spoke to my life. That happened on my teenage years. Then my college years are somewhat a dark area in my life, mostly because my dad passed when I was 19 years old. I was still a teenager. At 19 years old, you're still a teenager. You know, I just discovered music. From the moment God called me in that camp to that point of my life, I was all fire. I wanted to go, I wanted to serve, I wanted to continue to pursue this calling in my life, and then my dad dies. So I distanced myself. Not from church, not from God, but you know what, God? I said to myself maybe, you know what? I'm trying to live for you, but you took away my dad. So I really don't feel like living for you anymore. And I had to start working. And I learned from my dad to do construction business. At that time, he was already a successful businessman. He had a construction company. And all I could do to help my family was to continue to doing what he told me. And I started my own company. I partnered with a friend from college, and I started to becoming somewhat successful, you know. I could pay for my own stuff, for my own cool stuff. I could have whatever I wanted and still help a little bit at home. I was a good guy because I was serving a church, and I forgot about that day when God called me. And then God reminded me of that Bible verse. I don't know if you've heard this story. I think I've told this story a few times. At that point, I started dating Rachel. We started playing together. She was a worship leader, and I was a drummer. She was working at the Christian Academy School of Guatemala. It was a nice school that was meant to be for people who could pay in dollars, right? So it was a school for rich people. And on a Sunday, she told me, there's this kid that I want to go to his birthday party at that school where I work. First thing that comes to my mind is, it's a school for rich kids, and it's going to be fun. Let's go. I even remember thinking about that. You know, this is a good time to show in my car, my nice new sports car. You know, I have a new leather jacket, boots, and I'm going to be looking good for my girl, you know, and I'm just going to fit in, you know. For my surprise, the birthday party was not for any students. The birthday party was for the son of the janitor of that school. And a janitor in Guatemala is not the same that a janitor here in the United States. Here you can make a living as a janitor. Over there, you barely survive, you know? So I go to the party, and I see that I'm the only one with a car, and I'm the only one wearing these nice clothes. And I start looking at the kids, and I see all the kids, they don't have shoes. You know, very, very humble people. And again, I start feeling that fire, something. I wanted to cry. You know? And that's when I understood that God wanted to use me to help these kids. That's when I understood, and I started having these dreams about, what if I start an organization? What if I start a business and I start helping these people, you know, that nobody else is helping? And I knew that my dream was aligned with what God was putting in my heart, you know. And at that moment is when the in-between really started. What a long introduction, right? Um, but anyways, when I defined what my God-given dream was, and I decided to obey, we decided to obey, because Rachel was with me that day, and she saw me crying like a girl after that, um, that kid showed up. You know, I still feel like crying because I still feel that in me, you know, and that's just telling me that it is God, you know. So what is the in-between? The in-between is a long process of growth, but you're not alone. It is long. It is a process, and you have to grow. Process. A process might look like this, you know, and I did it like that because it's some sort of puzzle, you know. Not all the pieces come together at the same time, in the same position. All you have to do is trust that God is in charge of the process. You are not in control either of the process or the time, but you just have to continue to be obedient. I want to take you to the story of David. Remember King David? He was anointed to be king when he was 15 years old, right? And I think all of us have heard the story of him being anointed. He was not the tallest, not the strongest, but he was, you know, he was taking care of the sheep. He was the little kid, the youngest, taking care of the sheep. And then he was anointed as a king. And you would think, man, he's going to be king. All right, tomorrow we're going to throw a party for the new king. No, actually the Bible tells us that after he was anointed, you know what he did? He went back to take care of the sheep. So when he was taking care of the sheep, that process of preparation was happening. This is what it says in 1 Samuel 17:32 to 36. And we've heard the story about Goliath also, right? And here comes David, and he's offended about all God's people being scared of this giant, you know. And he goes to Saul and he says, "I'm gonna defeat that giant." And this is what Saul said to David: "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." And here is what happened while he was guarding the sheep, you know. David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb for the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth." And if that was not enough, if the lion would come back, he would struck and kill him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them. Process. I remember that when we decided to come to the United States with my wife, we didn't come to pursue an American dream or to, you know, there's nothing bad about it, but that was just not our purpose. Right at that time when I learned what my calling was, the church in Guatemala where we were going to sent us to start a church here in the United States. So I came as a part of the team with Rachel and her fathers, who are pastors, and we planted Vida Real, which is a church for Spanish-speaking people. And I could tell you so many stories, but all I want to say is that I came and I was not a part of the staff of church. What that means is that I came and I had to work to be able to be a part of the team. I was already working as an engineer. I had my own company in Guatemala. I thought, well, I'm going to go there and everybody's going to want to hire an engineer or a project manager. And no, that was not the story, When I was in college, I was 16 years old. My dad forced me to become an electrician. And I was working under his supervisors. He had his company and he had foremen and supervisors. I was the son of the owner of the company, and I was working under the supervisors. I could not comprehend what was happening, and I was so angry at my dad at that time. But you know what? God was preparing me because nobody wanted an engineer from Guatemala here at that time. They wanted an electrician, And that's what God used to provide for me and my family for the past 9 years of my life before I started working at Exus. During that time, though, I have to say, we stayed obedient to what God has called us to do. We continued to work at church, and we started another organization that is still working, helping children in Guatemala. It was hard, but it was a process, and we just obeyed. So in the process, also God connects you with key people, and there's many no's in this process, but sooner or later they will become in a yes. The other part is time. And that's another part that we cannot control. I cannot control time. Rachel caught me putting some cream the other day. I never used anything, but ¿cómo se dicen las ojeras? How do you say? Huh? My bags in my eyes were so big. And I always make fun of, Rachel wearing so much stuff. And the other day I'm like, man, I'm really getting old. You're not going to stop time. We cannot stop time. All we can do is be wise with the time that we have, right? When God told Noah to build the ark, he started, he obeyed, he knew what his calling was. And then 100 years later, the rain came. 100 years of building an ark. He was crazy. He was the crazy man. Moses, when Moses felt that fire in his heart to deliver his people, and he defended a brother Hebrew from an Egyptian, till the moment that he went in front of Pharaoh and told him to let his people go, there were 40 years. Joseph, I think everybody knows Joseph, but that's like the perfect drama movie, and it is real. Joseph had a dream when he was 15 years old, that he would rule over his brothers and his parents, and he would be a leader. They mocked him. He was sold. He almost got killed. He spent 25 years in this process until he became the leader of Egypt. And God used him to actually save his own brothers and his family. Joshua is one of my favorites. Joshua was sent as a spy to see the promised land. He was sent with another 12 spies. And out of the 12 that went to see the promised land, only him and Caleb came back saying, we can take them. God is going to give us this land. Joshua felt that fire. Joshua felt that moving in his heart. And he knew that he had to do something about it. He knew where he wanted to go, where he had to go. But it took him 40 years until he actually started leading the people of Israel to conquer Jericho. David, we just talked about David. It took 15 years for David to become a king, from the moment he was anointed to the moment he became a king. What I'm trying to say is, it's a long process. And the process, it's up to God, and we cannot control time, okay? We just have to know that God's times are better than our times. Psalm 90:12 says, teach us to number our days to gain a heart of wisdom. Another translation says, teach us to use wisely all the time we have. That's a picture of one of the job places that I was doing. I did the electrical for all that house. And at that time, I was so comfortable in that company because I was being paid by the hour. It was a good rate. And it was not a Russian company. It was not it's not a company run by Hispanics. Russians are working all the time, and it's never enough. And we Latinos, we are working all the time, and we're having fun with it, right? But this company was different. The mentality of the people that I worked at in this company was, let's they used to say, let's milk the cow. That means let's take it slow, And I remember that they used to take 2-hour lunchtime sometimes. And the first 2 months, I was like, I'm in heaven. Like, I love this company. I'm going to stay here. And then again, God reminded me, I'm not supposed to be just that. I have an organization to run. I have to serve God. So while everybody else was watching videos, having 2-hour lunch times, I built this table at that house, and I started studying, and I started bringing my computer. And while they were playing, and they were making fun of me, I had my laptop computer there, working for Joint Foundation, trying to find sponsors for the kids, planning strategies for the next year, learning how to truly become a leader, I wanted to be wise with the time I had. I didn't have 2 hours to play around because I had so many. Because I had so many kids to help. I cannot waste my time. Sorry. And then during the in-between, you have to grow. And this is the only one that you are in control of. You decide if you want to grow or if you want to stay how you are. Because the opportunity is going to come. If you weren't wise with your time, the opportunity is going to come and it's going to go because you're not going to be ready. So many areas that Rachel and I had to grow, and we are still growing. One of them is understanding that whatever we have doesn't belong to us. I remember that when we came to the United States, I knew I was not a part of the church staff, but I had this, good job. I started saving, I started working more, so I put a lot of money together, and I came here, and I was good for a year without work, and I said, that's the safe thing to do. Many things happened the first 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks here that I was not even good for 2 months. So I worked for so many years, and when I come here, one of the things that happened was that my papers to get a residence card, they were lost. I had paid so much money in dollars, right? Quetzales are not that, they don't roll well here in this country. So you work over there, you make quetzales, and then you come here, and it's like, what? I had paid all the money I could to make that process run along. And I lived in a city called Mixco in Guatemala, Mixco. So 6 months later, after starting that process, I received a letter saying that my process was canceled because I didn't reply. They were sending my papers back to Mexico, not Mixco, right? It was their fault. Anyways, I lost that. I lost the car. Rachel got an injury, and we had a bill for 3 hours at the hospital, and it was like $16,000. And I couldn't bear it, I'm telling you this because I had so much in my bank, and when that time came, I came to realize that I was going to lose everything. And we decided that before we lost whatever we had left, we had to start something. So the last bit we had to put a down payment for a house or something, we decided to give it to God, because in His hands, it would not be lost. And that's how it started. That's how Join Foundation started. It was not much, but I can tell you that whatever that amount was, today it's been more than 100% more. It has been multiplied in a way that I cannot explain. Not for me. We gave that money to help people. And so much money came to help more people out of that. The other thing, and I'm going to finish with this, is that we have to grow by understanding that what God gave us, the dream that God gave us, is not about us. It's never about me. It was never about me. And it's never about you, And this is the Bible verse that I read that day in the camp. Matthew 25:40. I assure you that when you have done it for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done it for me. Whenever God called you to do something, you're serving Jesus. And in this verse, He showed me that it's not about me. It's about the least of these. Another translation says the overlooked, the ignored. Those who nobody else is helping. I understood when I took the time to read what it says a few verses up and a few verses down, and it says, when I was hungry, you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me water. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. That seems so easy, but we don't do it. I was naked, you gave me clothes, sick, and you took care of me. I was in jail, and you visited me. By understanding that it's not about us, we also understood that it doesn't depend on us, And now I'm just going to finish by saying that, by showing you some of the photos of what I meant or what I mean when I say that I'm doing what I love and what my dream job is. This is a family that I visited last year. As you can see, they're extremely poor. They are renting that room. That space where I'm sitting is their living room. I went to visit them because they're a part of Ictus. And now I am in a position to say, I can do something for these people, you know. And ya no tiene batería. Can we go to the next one? And last year, actually November this year, these two kids got a scholarship, and they're going to school. Can we go to the next one? Sorry. And you actually, Journey Church, were a part of this. Remember we raised money to help kids in Colombia? And Jalina, the girl who's in that picture, is one of the girls whose home was flooded. We were able to help about 500 families, and she's one of them. And she received your help. And she's also receiving leadership training, and she's serving at church, as you can see on the other picture. So what I want to say is that the in-between of us having a dream and seeing it happen, it's not what we expect. It's a process, and it takes time. We have to grow during that time. It's a long process of growth, but you are not alone. Now that we are in this situation, me and my wife, we look back and we say it's so easy to say that God is good right now. You know, it's so easy to worship and to acknowledge that God is good and that His goodness will follow us when everything seems to get together, you know. But I am here to tell you that even in those moments where it didn't seem like it, God was still good. God is always good. And I just want to invite you to stand up and finish this time by singing to Him. Wherever you're at, if you don't know what's going on with your life, and if you don't know what your calling is, if you don't know what your purpose is, you have one, and you can find it. And God is with you, and He's good, you know. If you already found it, and you're struggling in that process, God is also with you, you know. And if you're already living it, you will know, as I do, that the process never ends. And you're always learning, always growing, and that all the circumstances that you had to overcome are only preparing you for what you're going to face when you're actually working in that calling. So why don't you come here, Rach? Because I'm going to go there. And yeah, let's just sing to God, and let's just say that He is good.